Welcome to Dory Cote on Shamanism, a weekly podcast that explores one theme in shamanism throughout each month. Get comfortable, have a seat, and let's get started. Hi everybody, I'm Dory Cote and here today to talk about healing grief, specifically about how you might create a shift in yourself regarding your beliefs about grief.
A listener wrote in and asked, I want to live a positive life and believe in magic, but look around us. How do we make sense out of everything negative that is happening in the world? How can we stay positive in the face of all the turmoil?
It is indeed true that we are living in highly turbulent times. And as I said in a prior podcast on this topic, we are so surrounded by the media filling us with global events that it's difficult to separate ourselves from all the negativity that is happening in the world. My suggestion is twofold. One of the best ways to fill yourself back up with a sense of hope and love and connection and positivity is to connect with the natural world, the abundance of life, the life force energy that is outside of your four walls, outside of your home. Get up and go for a walk. Go touch a tree. Trees are tremendous sources of power and healing and sense of hope. They are deeply rooted in Mother Earth, Pachamama, as some cultures believe her called. Hold on to the scent of a flower, the memory of that scent. Touch the leaves in a tree. Put your hands on the earth. Smell the sweetness of the spring air or the softness of the summer breeze. Allow yourself to be fully rooted in Mother Earth and be filled up again with positive energy. It is amazing to me on a regular basis how going for even a simple 10 or 15-minute walk where I can see trees and hear the birds and smell the breeze and look at the clouds and feel the earth beneath my feet fills me back up. If my container, if my spirit feels like, not my spirit, but my soul feels like it's been drained from listening to negative news all the time, then I go outside and it fills me back up. So that is one really practical, positive way to help restore that sense of magic and living in a positive life. The other is that I would suggest that you take the time to feed your spirit in other ways. And for each of us, that is unique. For some of us, it means that we do a shamanic journey if we have the capacity to do that. We go and connect with our spirit helpers and ask them to renew that sense of hope in our hearts, that sense of fullness and ability to believe that there is goodness in the earth and that there is goodness in life. There is tremendous goodness in humans. And if you don't know how to do a shamanic journey, perhaps you know how to meditate. Do a meditation and dedicate your meditation to filling up with hope and light and love of the spirits that surround you. If you don't do either of those things, then find some way. Maybe it's going and lighting a candle in your church. Maybe it is going and sitting quietly and saying a prayer and asking the presence of those spirits around you to fill you back up. Because when we are feeling so negative, it's because we have become depleted. Our battery has been run out, and we need to fill ourselves back up. So find your own truth about that. What works for you? But step number one is go out into nature, because she is a phenomenal battery that is ready to charge your battery. And you have access to her. I don't care where you live. You can live in New York City. You can live in downtown Manhattan. You can put your feet on the earth, even if it's concrete. Or find a little patch of grass. Put your feet on that grass and allow yourself to feel filled up. It does work.
Thank you. Another listener question for you. I had a close and very precious friendship that felt karmic and important. My friend pulled away suddenly, and while we are still in touch now and then, the friendship is forever changed. I grieve what I knew might have been, but she does not see or choose the path that I can see for us. How can I heal from this?
This listener wants to know how she can heal from the grief of the loss of this friendship. Living life in a body is filled with challenges because we don't live here by ourselves. We are not on a solo journey. We are on a journey with many other spirits who are here in a body. And life in a body is challenging because we have emotions, we have personality, we have our light side and we have our shadow side. And we're playing all of that out all the time. And we change. And as we change, our connections to other people who have traveled with us perhaps for many years on this journey in our bodies, and we become separated. We no longer are on the same path. We are in perhaps different places physically and perhaps in very different places emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually. And so it is difficult. And what I think is probably the most important thing to remember is that life has continuity. It isn't stagnant. Things do change. And yes, we do occasionally have to grieve the loss of a dear friend or even a family member who has gone off in another direction and who we currently cannot connect with. And so what I would suggest to the listener is that he or she do some ceremony to honor the ending, to honor the path that this other person has taken, and celebrate the time that you had together by doing a ritual or marking a space. Perhaps I mentioned this in our last podcast, I think, stack some stones, create a little cairn in a place that you honor where your friendship came to meet. Perhaps it's in your own backyard. Perhaps it's a precious place on the earth where you spent time together. Do something that ritualizes and honors the friendship, the partnership that you had with one another, the family connection, and then allow the release of this precious person in your life, recognizing that they are not dead. Their spirit hasn't left their body, but their spirit and their body and their mind and their soul and their emotional selves has gone in another direction. And that is the truth of life in a body. Thank you. Great question.
Thank you. In creating the shift in ourselves, it seems like grief can creep up and surprise us. We might be doing fine, and out of nowhere, a smell, a sound, a piece of music can bring back a loss, and with it immediate tears and grief. Why do these unexpected triggers come up?
Because we live in a body, we have many senses, as you just named. And our senses are phenomenally powerful. Memory, sound, a smell, a touch, even a texture in a touch. All of those things can remind us of a loved one who has passed on, or a moment with that loved one that we hold dear in our heart. And so it is part of being human that we have these moments or these periods of time in our life where we are more connected to the grief of our loss of a beloved. And it's a transition. It's a period of time where we are going deeper perhaps, or are revisiting a grief that touched us some years ago. I would suggest that the best thing to do is to allow the grief to be present, to work it through, to allow it to be expressed, to cry, to honor that the life of this person mattered to you, and that you do experience here in a body, you do experience that loss. That is the truth. And at the same time, allow yourself to remember that sense, that touch, that sound, and rejoice in the memory of that time that you had together, of the ways in which your spirits here in a body shared that experience, shared that smell, shared that time. And also recognize that it's possible that the sound or the smell or the touch is present with you because that spirit has come to visit you. And so you're experiencing some grief, but also you're experiencing that sound or that smell or that sense of touch, that texture, or that emotional sense. You're having that because that spirit actually is here closer to you in the moment, and you're having a sensual experience of their presence. So rejoice in that. Speak to that spirit. Allow them to be more present with you. Just say, hey, come have dinner with me tonight. Let's have a glass of wine together. Let's have that favorite meal that we enjoyed together. Let's go out for that wonderful Greek salad that we enjoyed together, or whatever. Honor their presence. And that in and of itself will also help mitigate to some extent the grief that you're experiencing.
Does healing grief ever end? Are we ever complete?
From my perspective, I believe no. Grief never ends. It is part of the human condition. It's, as I said in the prior question, it's part of being human. The human experience really is not always pleasant. We have many experiences that are challenging. One of them is the loss of a loved one. And grief may visit us frequently between now and when our spirit leaves our own body and is reunited with those wonderful loved ones in another realm. So, I often say this to people because it's not uncommon for humans to be impatient with their grief. When is this ever going to end? What do I have to do to make this grief end? I'm very honest with people and say, don't expect it to end. It's a reality of life in a body. And there are some losses that are so profound that the grief is intense for a very long period of time. And that's okay. What is not okay is to be alone in your grief. It is really important for people who are in intense grief, particularly in the period of year or beyond that, when they've lost a child or a spouse or some tragic ending has occurred to a beloved. It's very important to reach out, to continue to acknowledge your grief, to allow others to see and experience your grief. And yes, there will be some people who are uncomfortable with that. Then you have to make the choice to avoid them and be with the people who can honor your grief, who can just be with you. Most people who are in intense grief really just need someone to be with them, to not fill them with a bunch of platitudes, but just be. Allow them to be in their grief. And over time, so I don't want to be discouraging here, over time, even intense grief from the loss of a loved one does become lessened. Time does provide the balm of some healing. However, will you still have moments of waking in the middle of the night and feeling completely engulfed in grief? Likely, yes. And that is okay. It is the journey of life in a body. And it's important that you acknowledge it and try not to run away from it. Don't minimize it. Allow it to be. And the more you allow it to be, the less it will rule your life. Allow others to help you. Allow others to participate with you. Memorialize those who have left their body. Have a place, have a way of connecting with them. That all will help mitigate that loss.
Thank you. The last question, which brings us back to the title of this episode of creating the shift in yourself, of healing grief. How can I know when I have created that shift in myself from suffering to walking with my grief?
You will know you've created that shift in yourself when you accept that all beings alive on this earth at this time have a spirit, and they are fully alive and deserve to be honored and respected. And beyond that, global grief, that sense of overwhelm by what goes on in the world and our sense of being engulfed in that, you will know you've made a shift in that when you begin to dwell less in the negative and more in the hope that you as an individual can make a difference, that you have power, that you are not disempowered, that you are actually capable of feeding the positive of what goes on here on earth. In terms of healing personal grief, you will know that a shift has occurred in you when you go to that place of acknowledging that you are in grief, that you can express your grief, and that you can and will accept support from others around your grief, and you trust wholeheartedly that your loved one lives in another realm, is not gone, has not vanished, has not vaporized, but is in fact alive, and you are capable of accessing the connection with their spirit. When you have done these things, then you will know that you are at least in the process of creating that shift in yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to add?
I would like to say to the listeners that I feel truly honored sharing this journey with you and welcome any questions that you have about this topic or any other topics. And you may email me if you choose at Dory, D-O-R-Y, Cote, C-O-T-E, @gmail.com. And I will be happy to include your question in another podcast in the future. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing this subject with me.
Thank you for listening to Dory Cote on Shamanism. We'd love to hear your thoughts, stories, reactions, and questions. Come on over to dorycote.com and join the conversation. And tune in next week for more on this subject, or next month for a new subject. You can subscribe to this podcast in iTunes or sign up on dorycote.com to receive notices when the podcasts are posted. That's Dory, D-O-R-Y, and Cote, C-O-T-E.com. Drumming and rattling by Dory Cote and Terry Morgan. Technical assistance and audio production by JillHackett.com. And this is Susan Savelle, wishing you many blessings in your life. We hope to have you join us next time.